Are you somebody that loves the night sky? I mean, really, really loves it and can't get enough of images of galaxies and nebula and the Milky Way and star clusters and even the moon and maybe even the sun. And whilst you might love to actually capture your own images of all of these great targets, the actual idea of astrophotography, especially deep sky astro, just feels too intimidating. There's too much to learn. There's polar aligning, there's guiding, there's tracking, there's stacking, there's complex software, there's just gear and time that either you don't want to learn or don't feel ready to learn. There's all of these things that just sound like too much. But what if I told you that this right here will let you get your own images of the night sky with zero experience as an astrophotographer, and you'll get them on the first night? Let me explain. This is the Vaonis Vespera II Smart Telescope. Quick disclosure, Vaonis did send me this smart telescope for this video, but I haven't been paid for this video, and Vaonis, other than answering some clarifying questions, have not had any direction of where this video goes, nor have they seen it prior to release. So you can be assured that this is an unbiased review of the Vespera II. So in recent years, there's been a bit of a surge in different smart telescopes hitting the market, but Vaonis were one of the earliest pioneers, back to 2016, I think, and they've been releasing new models and innovating and iterating ever since then. Now, I'm not going to give you a spec dump of all the technical information about this scope, but I will hit on just a couple of key highlights. What we have is a focal length of 250mm and an aperture of f5. Now, 250mm is quite wide, but because of the Sony sensor in this telescope, it's a lot smaller than, say, an APS-C sensor. What it gets you is a field of view very similar to my 430mm telescope with an APS-C camera sitting on the back. What does this mean? It means that you've got lots of great targets that are going to fill the frame and be able to get lots of detail, like Orion, Rosette, the Carina Nebula, Fighting Dragons of Ara, and so many more. So it's a really good focal length that's going to get you some great images with lots of detail and character. So tonight, we're going to have a look at the moon, and might take a look at Orion as well. So the scope's going to extend and have a point up there and start doing some plate solving. So it's going to look at the stars, work out what they are, where they are, which will then orientate the Vaonis in its own little space. So it's doing that star pattern analysis now, and now it's started the autofocus routine. Once this is done, takes 1 or 2 minutes, I'm first going to send it off to the moon, and we're going to have a look at how it's appearing. All right, so initialization is successful and we're autofocused. So now in the app, we're going to go and look at my favorites, which I haven't saved the moon. There you go, but that's easy enough. All we need to do is search the moon. There it is. Get rid of that. And we're going to hit observe. Now it's saying that the moon currently is 37 degrees above the horizon. Let's see if it's going to find it. It's up there. Here we are. And there we have the moon. Now, I missed it by a few nights. I wanted to get this 4 or 5 days ago for when the moon's more in that half phase. But we can still see there's lots of detail across the face of the moon, because unlike a full moon, we can still see some shadows. So pinching in, what it's doing is it's now taking continuous photos over and over and over, very short exposures. And, oh, there's a bat. And you can see the quality of the image changes from frame to frame. And this is basically the atmosphere and all the muck and whatever it is up there. So it's just going to take lots of shots. It's not stacking them. At the moment, the Vespera II won't stack lunar and solar imaging. We can save individual frames, so we can just save the photo to my phone, but it is recording all of the images that it's taking, and in processing on my computer, if I want to go to that next level, I can use a program like AutoStackIt to try and get an even better, higher resolution image out of the moon. Higher quality image, not resolution. But I think it's getting some nice shots anyway. It's actually quite a cool night, even though technically yesterday was the first day of summer in Australia. The weather doesn't know what it's doing. So being a cool, crisp night, the atmosphere is just going to be a little bit clearer. All right, so let's stop that. And what I'm going to do is tell the Vespera to go to Orion. Now, interestingly, because we are under a pretty big moon tonight, I would say it's a good 75% or more, it's quite bright. And with Orion being a broadband target, that light pollution from the moon, let's just slew on over there and see what it looks like without any filter at all. So we come in, we do a search, look for Orion, there it is. And we're going to observe now. It says here to 20 minutes as a recommended minimum. So let's just hit observe and it's going to go and find it. Okay, we're starting to track. And now we're starting to capture. So let's see what Orion without a filter under quite a bright moon looks like to begin with. Okay. Now, straight off the bat, and this is something that I'm pretty impressed with this scope, and it's a lot to do with the Sony sensor that's in there, is that's not too bad. That's not too bad. Now, it's taking 10-second exposures each time, and it's doing a live stack in front of us. So unlike solar and lunar observations, it doesn't do live stacking there, but it is doing the live stacking when you're shooting at deep space targets like this. If we come in here, you can see it's not looking too bad at all. So I'm going to let this run for just 5 minutes because I want to put on the dual band filter, which is going to block a lot of that light pollution. Now, Orion being a broadband target, dual band filters are not often the best, but we'll see what kind of difference that it makes. Anyway, see you in a few minutes. And we're back. We've just gone 5 minutes worth of exposures. And look, I tell you, years ago, before I progressed past my camera and tripod, if I could have gotten a shot like this of Orion with just 5 minutes worth of work with the amount of effort that you've seen, blown away. Now, if I scroll back in time, you can see how the live stack builds up through each image. I do notice that we have some pretty severe gradients around the edges, so that would be the light pollution. I don't know, but I suspect the Vespera is doing a little bit of magic in there, possibly trying to knock down the light pollution in some fashion. But yeah, after 5 minutes, that's pretty cool. But what I'm going to do now, and what we can do is we can save the current stacked image onto my phone. We can do that. But what I'd like to do now is get this dual band filter on. So let's stop the observation. That. And I'm going to try and very carefully remove the blank on the front because I don't want to knock it out of its alignment. So let's throw this on there. Because I put the filter on, we will need to tell the Vespera to do a refocus, because just the slight thickness of the filter, that can affect the focus of any telescope. So I've just told it to start again, and once it's picked up Orion, it's only had to move a tiny little bit, I'll tell it to reinitiate a focus. Okay. So already we can see a marked difference because of the dual band filter, but I want to start that refocus. Just do that here. All right, here we go. And if we zoom in, I'm going to say those stars are fairly acceptable in sharpness. I'll take that. So now what I'm going to do is leave it run for a bit over half an hour. So what I've found is if you want 30 minutes of imaging, you need to let it run for about 35, because every 3 shots, the scope will dither. And what that means is it'll just change its position in the sky just a tiny little bit, and this helps reduce pattern noise, which can cause some weird artifacts. But because of that slight movement and the scope's got to resettle, for every 30 minutes that you want to capture, let it run for 35. That was a spider. I live in Australia. Damn. So on that happy note, I'm going to leave it and come back in a bit. On one of the last specs that I'll just mention, the build quality in this, there's a reason it weighs 5 kilos. So it's not a light, dinky little toy. This is it just feels like quality all the way through, and it's just got that good steady heft to it. But what that means though is you do need a substantial tripod. Now this is one of the optional tripods that are available from Vaonis for the Vespera II. It will also disconnect off here and go onto a standard tripod, but you would want, if you're using a photography tripod, it wants to be a strong one. So 5 kilo payload, good, strong, thick legs, because we don't want any wobbling around. At the beginning of the video, I mentioned that with this, you'll take the simplest, easiest photos of the night sky possible. And that is true, but it's also complex enough that when you're ready to take that next step, this will produce the files you need to actually go and start doing your own processing and find your own voice. Because when you get the images fed to your phone at the end of a night session, there is an element of samey same, because anybody else that uses this telescope and shoots the same target, it's going to have very, very similar framing. They're going to have very similar colouring. And because the Vespera stacks the image as it goes, yeah, you're going to have feelings that, this Orion feels like one that I've seen previously. But have a look at this photo of the Orion Nebula that I took. Now, it was only a short session. It was only 36 minutes worth. This is the image straight out of the Vespera II. Now, back in my earliest days of astrophotography, if I'd been able to capture something like this, I would have been over the moon. I've got a few more miles under my belt since then though, and here's the same image using the stacked TIFF file that the Vespera II creates at the end of the session. And I've gone into programs like PixInsight and Cyril and Lightroom and put my own flair on it, my own taste. And as you can see, it's quite significantly different to just the stock out of the SmartScope experience. But it's going to give you images that, in particular, if you're still a beginner, are going to blow your socks off down the track when you're ready to graduate and start going a bit deeper and a bit deeper. It's going to continue to deliver. And by deliver, well, now, because of the time of year here in Australia, our nights are a lot shorter, and the weather just for months has not been cooperating. I haven't been able to get out anywhere near as much as I'd like. But have a look at these images taken by other Vespera II owners, in particular this one. It's the Dolphin Head Nebula. They've got 26 hours of data in it over 4 different nights. So this can also play the long game, just like the other rigs that you see out there. And also too, how about this Wizard Nebula? I just love the look of it. I think it's got 6+ hours into it. Just a lovely, fantastic looking image. And if I had not known about the Vespera II before this, I would have assumed that it was taken with a traditional telescope with tracking mount, etc. And when you're ready to take that next step and start editing and processing your own images, Vaonis just recently released a great video giving some processing basics, and they show the dramatic difference between the out-of-scope experience and actually taking that stacked TIFF and going and doing your own thing. Now, if you're new to astrophotography editing, there's going to be lots of terms and words that you're not going to understand, and you won't necessarily know exactly what it is that you're doing, but if you follow the bouncing ball, you're going to end up with a much improved image and a greater sense of satisfaction that you're actually doing more than just tapping on your phone and pointing it up into the night sky. So the downsides. The big obvious one is the price. It is premium. We're talking about 3,500 kangaroo skins for just the telescope locally down here. So check the Vaonis website. There's the QR code there. Just give it a scan and check the prices, do your own local conversion. So it'll be really up to the pocket of the beholder whether the price is a bridge too far for you or not. But I would highly recommend you definitely check it out. The other small downside is it's what's known as an alt-azimuth mount. Now, typical astrophotography mounts are equatorial mounts, which means that once you point it to a target in the sky, it will follow that target in a very smooth arc. So being an alt-az mount, what it means is we have something called field rotation. Because to track the night sky, the mount needs to rotate around as it goes. So we might have our target out there, and as it's following, the whole mount needs to twist. What this means is that the camera is also going to be turning, and we lose some of the edges of the images the longer it goes for. It's not a big deal, but it is something just to be conscious of. Now, I did ask Vaonis at the time of filming, they're not planning on doing an equatorial option for the Vespera II, so it's not catastrophically bad, it's just something to note. We're going to do some solar imaging. Now, the sun's pretty high at the moment, and you do need to make sure that you can see the sunlight coming through the Vespera, because this is how it kind of has half an idea of how to track the sun, because we can't do any sort of alignment, like star alignment, because it's daylight. So we'll just turn it on. And we also need to make sure that our little bubble level is level. You do want to try to get it pretty accurate. All right, let's see if we've loaded up. Just going into the Singularity app. And we're going to go to Imaging, and we're going to look for the sun. There we go. Pick that, and I'm going to hit Observe. And yeah, it's quite high. It's 73 degrees above the horizon at the moment. All right, so we've got to install the solar filter. And what it will do, it'll push the arm out so I can put that on. So the solar filter is this one with the little S. Hopefully that's focusing on that. The good thing about the Vespera is if you try to do a solar session and it doesn't detect the filter, it won't let the scope point to the sun, because that would just basically fry the camera pretty quick. Oh, and also the first time you go to do a solar observation, The scope needs to have initialized at night, that it's done an alignment at night at least one time. I did have problems because the first time I went to do a solar observation, because I'd gotten the scope and I was all excited, and the day that I got it out of the box, I brought it up here and it said it wouldn't detect the solar filter. Now, I found out with a bit of digging, I've got to admit, because it's not really, I don't think it's in the manual. I'm going to say it's not, but if it is there, it's buried. And I only found out online that you do need to initialize the telescope at night at least one time. Like, since then, it's been fine. So here we go. It's spat out the scope, and we just remove the blank filter holder, and we're putting S for solar in. There we go, just like that. Back into the app, confirm filter installation. There we go. Now, it's also asking for us to double check that the scope is positioned right. So what we want to see here is the light of the sun coming through. So we just need to twist, there we go. So there's our sunlight. And now we say confirm. And it's going to have a bit of a think. This can take a few moments. It's not exactly the fastest thing in the world. So we'll just speed this up to get there. And seeing as the shadow is being cast this way, I might have to give it a helping hand in a moment. So I'm actually going to abort this and spin the Vespera around so it's ready in the right direction. It might make it there in its own time eventually, but I don't want to wait. So we're going to hit abort, but let's spin it around and see how we go this time. So again, we're looking for this bit of light to come through. Now, it is totally safe spinning the arm like this. The clutches in there are designed to do it. I confirmed that with Vaonis. So here we go, just getting that light in the middle popping through. And let's resume solar observation. And we're going to confirm the arm. So it's going to reset the arm and we're going to start over. When you do spin the Vespera around on its tripod mount, just make sure that you're spinning it against the threads so that you're not spinning it the other way, but it actually starts loosening off the head of the tripod, because then that, even like half a turn off, the head can just become a little bit wobbly. So spin it against the thread as if you're going to be tightening it up. So here we go. Let's see what happens this time. All right, so it's centering on the sun now. And now it's doing the autofocus routine. So none of this I've had to make it do myself. It just knows the workflow to go through for the solar observation. All right, autofocus is finished. And now the capture is starting. So what's interesting is a few days back I did an observation right when that really big sunspot was visible on this side of the sun. And that was the cause of the big auroras around the 12th of November. And now, unfortunately, there's actually no sunspots that I can, certainly out here in the sun, that I can see. So we've just got a plain disk. So what's happening now is the Vespera is taking continuous images of the sun. They're really short exposures. And what you can do is at any point, you can hit the little plus symbol here and then save to photos the latest image that's on the screen. You can leave it running for a while. I've had some success in leaving it for half an hour and just let it take shots that whole time, and it gives you about 1,400 images. Then if you want, so this is the out of experience image. Sometimes you might have to scroll through to find a sharp one because there's lots of turbulence up there with the atmosphere, and that's why the sun will go sort of in and out of focus. It's through the haze. But if you want to go to that next level, so this is more intermediate, you can use a program like AutoStackert to throw those 1400 images into it, and then you tell it to stack, after it analyses them, the best either 25% or like 250 of them. And this is the result I got from doing that, as well as a little helping hand in Lightroom for just some extra little sharpening to bring the most out of it. So rather than leave the unit doing another half-hour run now, I mean, there is a spot or two on there, but they're really small. They're almost like sensor spots on a camera, but I know they're not. And it's also quite windy. So I'm going to shut this session down and let's go back inside. Now, in the time that I've been out there looking in the smart telescope community, there's kind of two audiences that I see when we talk about the idea of smart telescopes. There's the salty old barnacles that believe unless you're enduring pain with your astrophotography, all the guiding and the tracking and the setting up and all of that stuff, if you're not doing that, you're not doing real astrophotography. Give me a break. And there's the other side, which I'm in, that the more people that get into astrophotography by any means that hopefully price across the industry comes down, innovation happens faster, and we get to see more awesome images. I kind of see smart telescopes as back when film was moving to digital in photography, and the whole idea that if you weren't doing film, you weren't doing real photography. Well, that's a completely different landscape now, but these days the analogy is more smartphones versus digital cameras, and how smartphones aren't real cameras and real photography. Look, honestly, I don't care what you use to take your photos, as long as you're getting fulfillment and joy out of what you're doing. It really doesn't matter how you get there.